When it comes to the average discussion about the best timepieces you absolutely need to add to your collection, moonphase watches, more often than not, tend to be either shushed or underrated. However, they can be beautiful and worth every last penny and scream to be talked about from time to time. In this video, we'd be talking about just how good they are and what some of the best affordable options you can find on the market are. Let's dive right in. For centuries, the moon has been one of the most talked about bodies in our solar system. Humanity has never shied away from even the slightest opportunity to examine its revolutions about the Earth, as well as a few other fascinating aspects. In order to do so, mechanical objects, instruments, and tools were created, and one of them in particular was the moonphase watch complication. Not only do they have such an amazing function, but they also look so elegant and sophisticated, which we can probably all agree is so many watches you can find lacking. Yes, we technically don't need moonphase watches anymore because the niche has lost a bit of its edge nowadays. Take absolutely nothing away from them, as they are still quite adored by many enthusiasts. There are so many affordable moonphase timepieces you definitely need to consider, but before we go into all that, let's properly dissect what they are and just how valuable they can be in terms of worth. So, what's a moonphase watch? For starters, just as the name truly implies, these kinds of timepieces have certain complications that allow them to keep good track of the phases of the moon. Isn't that cool? You can just take a look at the timepiece and immediately tell if you're going to have a full moon, a half one, a quarter one, or hey, even a new moon. Another nice aspect of moonphase watches is that at the exterior of things, they are really easy watches to read, despite being insanely complex in the interior aspects. And as a matter of fact, they require carefully crafted machinery just to be able to represent the cycles of the moon, which are usually around 29.5 days in length. In most situations, two moons are depicted on a disc with 59 teeth that advance one every 24 hours. These 50 teeth are then split by the two moons, yielding a lunar cycle of 29.5 days. Can you imagine what it takes to create such a tiny wristwatch? Despite the fact that the moons get switched every month, they are still correctly represented by the moon phases shown by the aperture. However, we'd like to add that these complications can't accurately track the exact cycle of the moon. Well, it's a machine after all. In the space of a month, moonphase watches tend to be off by around 0.3 days, which, in the long run, they would need a readjustment in the future as they would go completely out of sync with the lunar cycle after around 2.5 years. Alas, a couple of moonphase timepieces actually come with even more accurate gears with 135 teeth that can ensure great levels of accuracy for an estimated 122 years, completely blowing off their less complex 59 teeth counterparts. Now, how about these settings? Are they as basic as the average timepiece? Well, no. It's more complicated, but the truth of the matter is that these moonphase watches are way more accessible than the general consensus may claim. Alas, you would surely need a couple of specific instruments to do so. For starters, one of these things you'd need is a pusher tool. No dear, don't panic. You see, most of the brand new moonphase timepieces all come with it in their box. But in a situation where you've either misplaced yours or you're just not close to any at that moment, you can use a toothpick as a substitute. Do well to prevent scratching your watch by accident though. After that, locate the tiny button on the flank of the watch case. You'd need to press down on it with your tool to cycle the indicator through the lunar cycle to the correct setting. Finally, you'd need to have an accurate knowledge about the moon's current phase, and at most times a mere look at the sky wouldn't really be sufficient. Moonphase watches used to be a very practical way for scientists, sailors, and even astronomers to keep track of the moon's cycles, so that's one of the reasons why they became so popular in the first place. As the technology evolved and better tools were made, these watches became obsolete. However, their appeal and popularity amongst people who truly value them around the world is still relatively clear to see. And why wouldn't it be that way? They are so significant to the history of wristwatches. With all that being said, let's take a closer look at some of the most beautiful and probably even some of the very best options you can find in the market from the standpoint of affordability. So, what's a better way to start off other than the Longines Master Collection Moonphase? Longines combines two complications, a moonphase and a chronograph. The two pump pushers are so easy to operate and they aren't even light in any way. However, when it's time to make corrections on the watch, our best advice is to handle it with immense care so that every facet of the day, month, date and moon is perfectly aligned. There is a 24-hour indicator on the dial, which is used as a day-night indicator. The dial also uses the 7751 Valjoux layout, leaving some room for the Longines logo at 3 o'clock. Turning the watch over, you find the Longines caliber L678 movement, which goes at a tick rate of 28,800 beats per hour, with a power reserve that can last up to 2 days, which we can all agree is more than enough given the fact that it uses an automatic winding movement. It's also super comfortable on the wrist with its 40mm diameter, round case and slim classic-looking lugs. It's most certainly not bulky in any way, and it even feels like a tiny vintage watch when worn with your suit or long-sleeve shirt. Curious about how much it costs? Well, according to Chrono24, getting one would fetch you around $2,000 to just under $3,000. The Omega Speedmaster Professional Moonphase 3876.50 is another exceptional timepiece we must discuss. It comes with the Lemania-based Caliber 1866 movement, which offers the same functions as the regular Moonwatch Caliber 1861 movement, but of course, with the Moonphase indicator and added calendar, things get even spicier. The lunar complication for the 3876.50 works like so many moonphase complications you can see out there. It has a disc with 2 moons printed on it, connected to the calendar mechanism. Taking that into consideration, it makes a full rotation in 59 days, but given how the average lunar cycle takes 29.5 days, you'd need to add a couple of minutes to make it more accurate, or else it may go out of sync. The Omega Speedmaster Professional Moonphase 3876.50 with the Adventurine dial may be discontinued, but given how this 44.25mm timepiece is so rare, it's one of the most interesting options you can get. If you're curious about how much it costs, it's around $3,000 to $5,000 on eBay. Do you remember the Christopher Ward C1 Moonglow? You should probably get more acquainted with this magnificent timepiece if you don't. Just by merely looking at the box, you'd know the overall presentation of the watch is magnificent. It has a 40.05mm dimension with a height of 12.35mm. One of the unique features of this piece is the luminous section of the dating ring, which glows in the dark when charged up by sunlight. Alas, even when charged with a 500 lumen torch for 5 minutes, the dating ring doesn't glow as bright as the moon, hand or hour markers, which is kind of a drawback. On the specs side, its size is 40.5mm with a stainless steel case and then a height of 12.35mm. The piece's movement is the Christopher Ward Caliber JJ04, which beats at a frequency of 28,800 beats per hour. Its water resistance is up to 30 meters, and finally, its power reserve is 38 hours. As interesting as those specs are, this timepiece itself is still affordable. It can be gotten for just under $2,000. Another really affordable moonphase watch is the Jungens Meister Calendar Moon. It's also called the J800.3. The Calendar Moon, which gets its power from the ETA 2824-2 with a Dubois-Dipraz 9310 module. In terms of its dimensions, the watch measures a diameter of 40.4mm, tempered by the 45mm lug-to-lug. However, while it looks large on paper, it still feels like a modern dress watch on the wrist. It beats at a frequency of 28,800 beats per hour, while having a rated 48-hour power reserve, and finally, the beautiful timepiece comes with a 21mm brown leather strap. With a price tag of under $2,200, you can't go wrong with the Jungens Meister Calendar Moon. Once again, we have another timepiece from Omega. This time, it's the Omega Speedmaster Professional Moonphase 3575.20. This Speedmaster Moonphase features the popular hand-wound Lemania-based Caliber 1866 movement. The particular movement is more of a modified version of the caliber 1861 that can be found in the Speedmaster Professional Moonwatch timepieces. One of the reasons why this watch is so popular is that it holds the title of being the first watch on the moon. And if you're pretty much familiar with the white gold bezel of the reference 3689, then this much cheaper reference 3575.0 would sit right comfortably with you, as it also comes with a white gold bezel, albeit with a slightly different tone than the case and bracelet. Overall, the Speedmaster Professional Moonphase reference 3575.20 is a magnificent timepiece, and given how it has a legible dial coupled with a calendar, there are really not a lot of cons here. Interested in getting one? It only has an asking price of around $3,500 to $5,000 on eBay.